You ever hear a story so wild that even the people who want to deny it can't stop talking about it? Because that's exactly what's happening right now. Overnight, reports and leak claims started spreading that a final warning audio linked to Charlie Kirk is circulating online, and the internet is acting like somebody dropped a match inside a room full of gasoline. Not because anyone has confirmed it's real, and not because we're saying it actually happened, but because the way these reports are being framed is so explosive that it has turned into a full-blown digital stampede. And here's the part that has fans completely shocked. The alleged audio isn't about politics the way you'd expect. It's not a speech, not a rally clip, not some normal behind-the-scenes recording. The claims say it's a private message, the kind you only make when you're scared, when you're whispering because you don't even trust the walls around you. And according to the way people are describing it, the words are chilling. Check what Erica deleted. Now pause right there, because when a rumor goes from someone said something to someone deleted something, that's when emotions run high. That's when fans stop watching from the sidelines and start playing detective. And suddenly, everybody is asking the same question at the same time. Why would a person delete anything if there's nothing to hide? The leak chatter claims this audio suggests Charlie had found something he didn't understand at first, something that allegedly tied back to Epstein-related files, names, or contacts that people have argued about for years. And the moment those words got attached to Erica's name, the story stopped being just gossip and turned into a reality TV-level scandal, the kind where friendships crumble, loyalties shift, and everybody who ever smiled for the camera starts looking like they've been hiding secrets. And if you think this is just another internet rumor that will disappear in 24 hours, think again. Because the same reports insist there's more than one recording. And if that's true, then this isn't just a messy headline. This is the kind of drama that leaves the inner circle panicking, the family left divided, and the entire audience waiting for the next leak like it's a season finale cliffhanger. When these reports first started circulating, the initial reaction was confusion. Some people brushed it off as internet noise. Others said it was recycled drama dressed up as breaking news. And a few argued it was a calculated distraction meant to pull attention away from something else entirely. But as more commentary videos, threads, and reaction clips appeared, the mood shifted fast. Fans were no longer just scrolling past headlines. They were dissecting every claim, every alleged quote, every pause in the supposed audio. Emotions run high, and what began as rumor quickly transformed into a full-scale spectacle that felt straight out of a reality TV meltdown. What truly set the story apart, according to the way these reports were framed, was that it was not about a public speech or a political statement. It was described as a private warning, an alleged audio message never meant to leave a trusted circle. Commentators claimed the voice did not sound confident or controlled. Instead, they described it as tense, rushed, almost fearful, as if the person speaking felt pressure to get the message out before it was too late. And then there was the line that sent shockwaves through fan communities everywhere. Check what Erica deleted. That single phrase became the spark that lit the fire. Once Erica's name was attached to the discussion, reactions split sharply. Some supporters immediately jumped to her defense, saying this was nothing more than a smear campaign built on speculation. Others took the opposite view, arguing that deletion itself raises questions, especially when combined with vague references to files, contacts, or past communications. A third group, always eager for scandal, began tying the entire situation to darker narratives that have haunted public discourse for years. Suddenly, this was no longer just gossip. It was being framed as part of a much larger and more dangerous story. According to several commentary channels, these alleged recordings were connected to a period when Charlie's behavior reportedly seemed different to those around him. People claimed he appeared more guarded, less open, and noticeably cautious about what he shared and with whom. At the time, fans and observers chalked it up to stress, pressure, or exhaustion. Now, however, these same behaviors were being reinterpreted as signs of internal conflict. The narrative being pushed was that he may have known something troubling, something that weighed on him heavily. Anonymous sources cited in these reports claimed Charlie had hinted privately that not everything in his personal life was as stable as it appeared publicly. One frequently repeated
claims suggested he once remarked that the most revealing evidence is often what someone chooses to erase. That statement, harmless on its own, took on new meaning once it was linked back to the alleged audio. Fans began connecting dots, convinced there was a hidden story beneath the surface. Erica, meanwhile, became the center of intense scrutiny. Fans claimed they noticed sudden shifts in her online presence. Some said her posting slowed down. Others pointed to changes in comment sections, privacy settings, or older content quietly disappearing. None of this proved anything on its own. But in the context of a leak narrative, even ordinary digital housekeeping became fuel for speculation. In the world of online drama, silence and subtle changes often speak louder than statements. Reactions from friends and associates only added to the tension. Commentators pointed out that people who once seemed outspoken in their support appeared unusually quiet. There were no strong defenses, but no outright condemnations either. This neutral stance unsettled fans even more. Longtime reality TV viewers know that when everyone suddenly stops talking, it often means conversations are happening behind closed doors. Media-focused commentary channels quickly jumped in, each offering its own version of events. Some framed the situation as a resurfacing of old information that was never meant to be revisited. Others argued it was part of a power struggle, with competing interests leaking selective details to control the narrative. A few openly admitted that even if none of it was verifiable, the story itself was irresistible because of how it tapped into existing fears and suspicions. The common thread across all these takes was simple: doubt had been planted, and once doubt takes root, it spreads fast. Fan debates became increasingly heated, comment sections filled with arguments about proof, credibility, and intent. Some insisted nothing should be believed without concrete evidence. Others countered that patterns of behavior can be just as telling as documents or recordings. These discussions quickly expanded beyond Charlie and Erica, pulling in anyone who had ever been perceived as part of their inner circle. Another layer of drama emerged through claims involving family tension. Reports suggested that disagreements and uncomfortable conversations were happening privately. People speculated about trust issues, emotional distance, and unresolved arguments. Whether true or exaggerated, these claims fit neatly into the betrayal narrative that audiences find so compelling. Fans began framing the situation as a breakdown not just of reputation, but of personal relationships. By this point, the story had grown far beyond an alleged audio clip. It had become an ongoing saga where every character was under suspicion. Who knew what, who stayed silent, and who might be protecting their own image became central questions. The intensity of the reaction led many to wonder why a story based on unconfirmed reports was provoking such strong responses. The mention of Epstein-related material, even indirectly, added another level of gravity. That name alone carries enough weight to shift public perception instantly. Fans argued that once such associations enter the conversation, coincidence becomes harder to believe. Even those who remained skeptical admitted the context made the rumors harder to ignore. As the atmosphere grew more charged, it became clear that audiences were not satisfied with half answers. Whether these reports were true, exaggerated, or entirely fabricated, they had succeeded in capturing attention. People were no longer asking whether the story mattered. They were waiting to see what would come next, convinced that the fallout was only beginning. When the story refused to die after the first wave of reaction videos, that was when people realized this was not going to be a one-day headline. Commentary channels kept repeating the same disclaimer over and over, that these were only reports and alleged leaks, not confirmed facts. But the tone of the discussion kept getting darker. Fans were not just reacting emotionally anymore, they were trying to reconstruct a timeline. They were asking when this supposed audio was recorded, who it was meant for, and why it was suddenly being talked about now. The more questions they asked, the more the narrative started to feel like a slow-burn drama instead of a simple rumor. According to the way several commentators described it, the alleged warning audio did not surface randomly. They claimed it appeared shortly after renewed online discussions about old Epstein-related files started trending again. No proof was shown, but the timing alone was enough to make people suspicious. Fans argued that stories like this always seem to resurface when the internet is already primed for outrage. Still, others pointed out that timing does not create words that do not exist. If someone was quoting a sentence like, "Check what Erica deleted," then that line had to come from somewhere, even if it was taken out of context. The emotional core of the story, as presented by these reports, was fear. Not anger, not ambition, but fear. Commentators said the alleged tone of the voice suggested someone who felt cornered. They described it as the kind of message you leave when you feel like you cannot speak freely anymore. Whether that interpretation was accurate or not, it stuck. Fans began replaying the description in their minds, imagining what kind of situation would push someone to record such a message instead of confronting the issue openly. People who followed Charlie closely began revisiting older clips, interviews, and appearances. They were not looking for statements about Epstein or Erica specifically. They were looking for mood changes. Some claimed they noticed moments where he seemed distracted, moments where his usual confidence dipped. Others said this was classic confirmation bias, that once a story exists, people start seeing patterns that were never meant to be there. But even skeptics admitted that the atmosphere around his final public appearances felt heavier in hindsight. Erica, meanwhile, became the focal point of online speculation, even though no direct evidence was presented. Fans debated what deleting something actually meant. Some argued that everyone deletes messages, files, and emails all the time, and that it means nothing. Others countered that context matters. Deletion tied to a warning, even an alleged one, carries a different weight. In drama-driven spaces, intent is often assumed long before facts are established.
That is exactly what seemed to be happening here. Commentary videos began dramatizing the possible conversations behind closed doors, not stating them as facts, but posing them as what-if scenarios. What if someone confronted someone else about missing files? What if a conversation turned tense? What if silence followed? These imagined scenes fueled engagement because they felt personal. Fans are drawn to stories where private trust appears to break down. It transforms public figures into characters in a narrative they feel invested in. Another layer of tension came from the alleged reactions of people around them. Reports claimed that friends and associates were acting carefully, choosing words with precision, avoiding definitive statements. To fans, this caution felt loud. People online often interpret careful language as fear of saying the wrong thing. Whether that interpretation is fair or not, it became part of the story. Every neutral comment was framed as avoidance, every lack of response as strategy. Some commentators pointed out that this is how modern scandals grow, not through one big reveal, but through a series of small, ambiguous moments that audiences connect themselves. A rumored audio here, a deleted post there, a quiet friend, a vague quote. None of these prove anything on their own, but together they create a sense of something unresolved. That unresolved feeling is what keeps viewers watching. The mention of Epstein-related material, even as an indirect reference, escalated everything. Commentators were careful to say that no one was claiming direct involvement. Instead, they spoke about how that name functions symbolically online. It represents secrecy, power, and unanswered questions. Once it enters a narrative, even loosely, people assume the worst. Fans acknowledge this, yet many admitted they could not look away once that association was suggested. Online arguments grew more intense as days passed. Supporters accused critics of spreading harmful speculation. Critics accused supporters of blind loyalty. Both sides claimed they were protecting the truth. In reality, most people were reacting emotionally to a story that felt bigger than any single person. It was about trust, image, and the fear that public personas hide private realities. Some fans started questioning why a story based purely on alleged reports had triggered such visible anxiety in online spaces. They argued that if nothing was there, the reaction would not be this strong. Others pushed back, saying the internet overreacts to everything, especially when mystery is involved. This back and forth only amplified the attention. What made the situation feel unresolved was the insistence by some channels that this was not the only piece of alleged audio being discussed. They hinted at the idea of more context existing somewhere without explaining where or with whom. Again, no proof was offered, but the suggestion alone was enough to keep people hooked. Audiences are conditioned to expect escalation. Once they believe there is more to come, they stay. By the end of this phase of the story, one thing was clear. Whether true, exaggerated, or entirely fabricated, the narrative had taken on a life of its own. It was no longer about proving anything, it was about anticipation. People were
waiting, refreshing feeds, watching commentary, and bracing for whatever detail might surface next, convinced that the silence surrounding the claims meant the tension was far from over. As the speculation stretched into another cycle, the tone across fan spaces began to shift from curiosity to suspicion. People were no longer asking if the reports were real. Instead, they were asking why the story kept expanding without anyone fully shutting it down. In online culture, denial is usually loud and fast. What unsettled many viewers was the absence of a clear, forceful response. That silence became its own character in the drama, one that fans interpreted in wildly different ways. Commentary channels leaned into the emotional side of the narrative. They talked about pressure, about what it feels like to carry information you cannot share publicly. They framed the alleged situation as a private conflict that spilled into the public eye, not by choice, but by fear. Viewers were reminded again and again that these were only reports, yet the language used was heavy with implication. Phrases like "people close to the situation" and "sources familiar with the matter" appeared constantly, giving the story an air of insider knowledge without actually confirming anything. One recurring theme was trust. Fans debated what it means when trust erodes quietly rather than through explosive confrontation. Some argued that if someone truly believed there was danger, recording a message would make sense. Others said that recording anything at all points to paranoia. Both interpretations existed side by side, feeding the tension rather than resolving it. The uncertainty kept people emotionally invested. Erica's role in the narrative continued to evolve, not through new evidence, but through interpretation. Commentators emphasized that she had not been accused of anything directly. Instead, they focused on reactions attributed to her. Small details were magnified: a delayed response, a carefully worded post, a moment of absence. Fans treated these moments like clues in a mystery series. Every action was analyzed for meaning it may not have carried at all. Supporters pushed back hard against what they called character construction. They argued that the internet was turning a real person into a villain based on nothing but vibes and speculation. Critics countered that public figures choose visibility, and with it comes scrutiny.
This clash played out daily across comment sections, each side convinced they were defending something important. The debate itself became entertainment. The story gained another layer when some commentators suggested that this alleged situation had ripple effects beyond just two individuals. They spoke about circles of influence, about how rumors can make entire communities nervous. Suddenly, the focus was not just on Charlie and Erica, but on people who might be connected to them socially or professionally. Fans speculated about meetings, conversations, and unspoken agreements, even though no concrete details were offered. This is where the reality TV energy intensified. Viewers were encouraged to imagine off-camera moments, closed doors, hushed arguments, tense silences at dinner tables. Again, no one claimed these scenes happened. They were presented as hypothetical, yet vivid enough to feel real. The power of suggestion did the rest. Audiences filled in the gaps themselves. Some fans began revisiting older online interactions, screenshots, and archived content, not because it proved anything, but because it felt like part of the investigation. This crowdsourced detective work gave people a sense of control over a story that otherwise felt murky. Whether they found anything meaningful or not, the act of searching became part of the experience. Commentators also discussed how modern scandals rarely end cleanly. Instead of one definitive reveal, they unfold in fragments. A rumor here, a reaction there, a quiet move that fuels later speculation. The alleged warning audio fit perfectly into this pattern. It was vague enough to invite endless interpretation, yet specific enough to feel intentional. Emotions ran high as fans projected their own fears into the situation. For some, it was about betrayal. For others, it was about being misunderstood. Many viewers admitted they were less interested in what actually happened and more interested in how the story made them feel. It tapped into a collective anxiety about secrets, power, and the idea that truth is always just out of reach. The Epstein reference continued to hover like a shadow. Even when commentators tried to downplay it, its presence shaped the conversation. People argued that mentioning it at all was irresponsible. Others said ignoring it would be dishonest, given how often it appears in speculative reporting. The name carried weight regardless of context, and everyone knew it. As days passed, the narrative seemed to settle into a strange rhythm. No new
information, yet constant discussion. Fans noticed that the lack of updates did not slow engagement. If anything, it intensified it. Silence created space for imagination, and imagination filled that space aggressively. Some viewers began questioning the ethics of the coverage. They asked whether turning alleged fear into entertainment crossed a line. Others replied that commentary is not accusation, and that audiences are capable of critical thinking. This debate added yet another layer to the drama, turning the story into a meta-conversation about media consumption itself. What stood out most during this phase was how personal the reactions became. People spoke as if they were emotionally invested in the outcome, even though they acknowledged they did not know the truth. Parasocial bonds blurred the line between observation and involvement. Fans were not just watching a story unfold, they felt part of it. By this point, the narrative had fully transformed into an ongoing saga. Each day without clarity felt like another unresolved episode. Viewers kept waiting for a moment that would either confirm everything or make it all collapse. Until then, the story lived in a state of suspension, fueled by speculation, emotion, and the powerful pull of the unknown. As the story continued to circulate without resolution, a new layer of tension emerged that shifted the conversation again. Fans were no longer focused only on what the alleged audio might contain. They started paying attention to how people around the situation were behaving. Reactions became the story. Commentary channels pointed out that whenever a rumor truly has no weight, it usually fades quickly. This one was doing the opposite. It was lingering, evolving, and drawing in new voices every day. One of the most talked about angles during this phase was the idea of fear versus guilt. Commentators were careful to separate the two, at least on the surface. They emphasized that fear does not automatically mean wrongdoing. Fear can come from misunderstanding, from pressure, or from knowing that any narrative tied to certain names can spiral out of control. Still, viewers noticed how often fear was mentioned in relation to the alleged warning. That framing alone made people uneasy. They asked themselves why fear would be the dominant emotion in a story that, according to defenders, had no substance. Supporters of Erica argued passionately that the entire narrative was built on projection. They claimed the internet was turning normal human behavior into suspicious patterns. Taking breaks from social media, being cautious with words, or choosing silence during controversy were described as rational responses, not admissions of anything. They warned that the audience was confusing storytelling with reality, and that this kind of speculation could harm real people. On the other side, critics argued that the silence felt strategic. They said that when public figures believe a rumor will die on its own, they often choose not to engage. But when a story grows louder instead of quieter, that approach can backfire.
In this case, every day without clarity added weight to the mystery. Viewers felt like they were being asked to fill in the blanks themselves. The narrative also began to pull in broader themes about image and identity. Commentators discussed how carefully constructed public personas can make any hint of secrecy feel more dramatic than it might otherwise be. When someone is known for transparency and values, even unproven allegations of hidden information can feel like betrayal to fans. Emotions ran high not because of evidence, but because of expectations. Some channels focused on how quickly audiences assign roles in these stories: heroes, villains, victims. Once those roles are set, every new detail is interpreted through that lens. A neutral action by one person becomes suspicious. A defensive comment by another becomes confirmation. This psychological framing was dissected openly, yet many viewers still fell into it willingly because it made the story easier to follow. The alleged presence of more than one recording continued to fuel anticipation. Commentators stressed again that nothing had been verified, but the idea that there could be additional context kept people invested. Fans debated whether more information would clarify the situation or only complicate it further. Some said they wanted closure. Others admitted they enjoyed the suspense too much to want it resolved quickly. Another shift occurred when people began questioning motives behind the reports themselves. Who benefits from this story staying alive? Is it content creators chasing views, anonymous sources seeking relevance, or audiences who crave drama more than truth? This self-awareness did not stop engagement. If anything, it made the discussion feel more intense, as though everyone knew they were part of a spectacle but continued watching anyway. Friends and associates remained a
Focal point of speculation. Commentary videos analyzed indirect statements, vague reposts, and carefully chosen words. Nothing explicit was said, yet viewers treated these signals as meaningful. The idea that people close to the situation were walking on eggshells reinforced the belief that something sensitive was being avoided. Family dynamics also became part of the narrative again. Reports suggested tension, not necessarily because of wrongdoing, but because of stress. Fans debated how rumors alone can strain relationships. They imagined conversations filled with frustration, exhaustion, and confusion. These imagined scenes were never presented as facts, yet they felt real enough to draw empathy from viewers. The longer the story dragged on, the more it became about trust in media itself. Viewers questioned which voices deserved attention. They criticized channels that leaned too heavily into implication, while praising those that acknowledged uncertainty. At the same time, the most sensational takes continued to get the most views. This contradiction was not lost on anyone. Some fans began to pull back, saying the speculation had gone too far. Others doubled down, insisting that public scrutiny is necessary when power and secrecy intersect. Both sides claimed moral high ground. The debate grew less about Charlie and Erica specifically, and more about what audiences expect from public figures in moments of controversy. Throughout all of this, the original alleged line kept resurfacing. Check what Erica deleted. It was repeated, paraphrased, and analyzed endlessly. People argued over what deletion even means in a digital age. Is it cleaning up clutter, protecting privacy, or hiding something dangerous? Without context, the phrase remained a blank canvas onto which everyone projected their own fears. By now, the story had reached a point where resolution almost felt impossible. Even if someone came out with a clear denial or explanation, many viewers admitted they might not believe it. Once doubt settles in, it reshapes perception permanently. Commentators noted that this is the real power of rumor. It does not need to be proven to be effective. It only needs to feel plausible. As engagement continued to climb, audiences sensed that the situation was approaching another turning point. Either new information would surface, or the silence would stretch long enough to exhaust interest. Until then, the drama existed in a constant state of tension, not confirmed, not dismissed, just hovering. And for many viewers, that uncertainty was exactly what kept them watching, commenting, and waiting for whatever might come next. By the time the conversation reached this stage, the story had stopped behaving like a rumor and started acting like a long-running saga. People were not waiting for confirmation anymore. They were waiting for a moment, a slip, a reaction, a clarification that felt real enough to settle their nerves. Commentator channels described this phase as the calm before escalation, the point where tension sits so thick that even silence feels loud. What complicated everything was how divided the audience had become. Some viewers openly admitted they didn't care whether the reports were accurate. To them, the situation represented a familiar pattern where power, secrecy, and reputation collide.
Others were increasingly uncomfortable, arguing that repeating alleged claims without proof risks turning speculation into accepted truth. Both sides accused the other of missing the point. One side said ignoring the story felt naive. The other said amplifying it felt reckless. The alleged audio itself became almost symbolic rather than literal. People talked about it less as a recording and more as an idea, a warning, a whisper, a sign that something beneath the surface had cracked. Commentators pointed out how often scandals reach this stage, where the content matters less than the implication. Once audiences believe there is something to hide, they stop needing details to stay invested. Erica's silence continued to be interpreted in conflicting ways. Supporters said silence can be a form of self-protection, especially when dealing with internet speculation that feeds on reaction. Critics argued that silence in the face of growing narratives creates space for others to define the story. Neither interpretation could be proven right or wrong, which kept the tension unresolved. Emotions ran high precisely because there was no clear emotional cue to follow. Some channels shifted focus toward the psychological toll of such stories. They talked about what it feels like to wake up and see your name attached to allegations you cannot disprove, because they were never fully stated in the first place. Viewers were reminded that living inside a rumor can be exhausting, isolating, and frightening. At the same time, others pointed out that public visibility comes with public judgment, fair or not. This push and pull shaped the
tone of the discussion. The idea of trust resurfaced again, but this time in a broader sense. Not just trust between individuals, but trust between audiences and the media they consume. Viewers asked themselves whether they trusted the channels presenting the story, or whether they were simply enjoying the drama. Many admitted it was both. The entertainment value was undeniable, even as discomfort grew. Another wave of speculation centered on timing. Why now? Why did these reports gain traction at this moment instead of earlier? Commentators offered theories without asserting facts. Maybe it was algorithmic coincidence. Maybe it was cultural fatigue with unanswered questions. Maybe it was simply the internet doing what it does best, turning fragments into narratives. None of these explanations fully satisfied anyone, which kept the debate alive. People also began questioning whether resolution would even matter anymore. Some fans said that even if a clear explanation emerged, the damage was already done. Perception had shifted, doubt had been introduced. Others argued that clarity could still reset the conversation, that audiences are capable of moving on when given enough information. This disagreement reflected a deeper uncertainty about how forgiveness and forgetting work online. The name Epstein continued to hover in discussions, even when commentators tried to move away from it. Its presence acted like an anchor, pulling every interpretation toward darker assumptions. Viewers acknowledge that mentioning it at all changes how stories are received. Once that association exists, even indirectly, it becomes almost impossible to neutralize emotionally. What stood out most was how personal the reactions felt. Viewers spoke as though they had been personally let down or personally accused. Parasocial bounds intensified everything. People who had never met any of the individuals involved felt invested in their choices, their silence, their imagined conversations. This emotional proximity blurred the line between observer and participant. Some fans predicted that the story would eventually fade without resolution, joining the long list of internet controversies that burn bright and then disappear. Others insisted this one felt different, not because of proof, but because of persistence. The fact that it refused to collapse under scrutiny made it feel significant, even if that significance was constructed. As the cycle continued, a strange fatigue set in alongside the obsession. Viewers were tired of speculating, yet unable to stop. Commentary videos acknowledged this openly, describing the story as draining and addictive at the same time. That honesty resonated with audiences who felt the same pull. In the end, the narrative reached a point where the unanswered questions became the story itself. What was deleted? Why it mattered? Whether fear was justified or imagined? None of these questions were resolved, but they did not need to be. The unresolved nature kept the drama alive, suspended between denial and belief. What remained was a lingering sense of unease, not because anything had been proven, but because the possibility of hidden truths is often more powerful than facts. The story settled into that uncomfortable space where nothing is confirmed, nothing is dismissed, and everyone is left projecting their own conclusions. And that is where things stood, not with answers, not with closure, but with anticipation, a shared feeling that something had shifted, even if no one could say exactly what. The reports continued, the commentary continued, the debates continued, and until something definitive breaks the silence, the story remains exactly where the internet seems to like it most, unfinished, provocative, and impossible to ignore. Now you have heard how these reports are being talked about, how the alleged warning audio has been framed, and why so many people online are reacting the way they are. Nothing in the story has been confirmed, and that uncertainty is exactly what keeps emotions running so high. Some viewers see red flags, others see nothing but speculation, and many are still undecided. That is what makes this situation so intense. It is not about facts being proven yet. It's about perception, silence, and the questions that refuse to go away. So now it is your turn. What do you think about these reports?
Do you believe the alleged audio is being taken out of context, or do you think the reactions surrounding it say more than the claims themselves? Why do you think the story keeps growing even without clear evidence? Is it because people sense something unresolved, or is it simply the internet feeding on mystery and drama? If you were watching this unfold from the outside, how would you respond? Would you stay silent, speak up, or wait for everything to fade away? And do you think silence helps calm situations like this, or does it only give rumors more power? These are the questions everyone
is arguing about right now, and your opinion is part of that conversation. If you want to stay updated as this story continues to develop through reports, reactions, and commentary, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update, especially if new claims or responses surface. And most importantly, leave your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective, your theories, and your questions keep this discussion moving. The more people engage, the more angles come to light, and the closer we get to understanding why this story has captured so much attention.